when she was born.
I was in my 12th year. I can't exactly remember. See, she was born in June, so maybe I had turned 13 by the time she was born. No, because there's 12 years of difference. So that's kind of either I was 11 and turned 12 when she was born, or it was the other way around.
Okay.
And she was an adored baby as far as I could remember. One of the things that was a happy circumstance about her is that I was, by the time she was around next year, when she turned 1 or so, and she liked to be pushed in the stroller and taken for walks. And by that time, I had developed an affection for your father. And so I used to take Martha for walks. And I would walk all the way up Foster Street from our house and walk back. So that was a clever use of my sister.
Nice. I didn't realize that you developed an affection for my father so early.
We were going together through high school. Yeah. I don't remember how old we were when we started to go together. Well, so how old were we?
Oh, I think it was probably in our junior year, maybe, that we were officially an item.
Right. And before that, we were part of the neighborhood clique.
Were you?
Yes, there were several boys and girls that were kind of a neighborhood all get together. We used to play lost track with everybody, and as we got into our junior and senior year, we had parties and did things like that. I was very good friends with a girl that lived, we lived right here on Canandaigua Street, and she lived over this way on Jackson Street. Her name was Judy Harder, and at that time she was my best friend. And she died of cancer shortly after, well, maybe a couple of years after graduation. Wells, I know it was kind of after Patrick was born, but she died of cancer real young. And that was a shame.
Yeah, that must have been hard.
And so there was the twins. 2 sets of twins were in our group.
Oh, that's fun.
And one was Jean and Joan, and the other was Peter and David. Yeah, and they were part of our group. Good friend of ours, of Dad's still, was Jimmy Waples, and Barbara Garrett, and Vincent Smith, who turned into a doctor and came back to Palmyra to practice, and he was Grandma's doctor for quite a long time. He was very good with senior citizens, just very good. And I know I'm forgetting, Chloe Pembroke was part of it. It was a whole group of kids that were accustomed to getting together. Vincent died, 10, 12 years ago, Wells. He got HIV and he died. He was a good friend of Chuck's. I don't know if you remember Chuck. He was the one that had a house when we went to Cornhill.
I remember Rochester and somebody's house.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he and Chuck were good friends. Chuck died too of HIV.
That's a long list of people's names that you remember from high school. I'm impressed by that. You guys got together and had parties with music, or dancing or hung out?
Beer.
Beer, okay.
We had a lot of parties at Vincent's house. Vincent was adopted, and his father died some point in there, and he took care of his mother, and he lived there in that house until he died.
Oh, wow.
He had whippets.
Did he?
Those skinny greyhound-looking dogs.
Yeah.
And we visited him in adult years, and he had a pool in his house. It was an indoor. Well, it wasn't actually indoor. It was like an annex to his house, and it had a cover on it, and that was really nice. We had one of our class reunions. We had a party there. And that was nice. He was a very good person.
He was. I remember I had him. He was Marissa's first doctor.
Yeah,
When I had her.
yeah, he really was. He would have made a very good geriatric doctor.
Well, they hadn't had the advance in HIV
That's right.
medications when he
Yeah.
developed it.
Yeah. So this was a while ago.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, Marissa's 44, so.
Well, that he died. Was it in the 80s or the 90s?
Oh, I think it was probably
The 80s.
15 years ago or so.
Really?
You think more?
No, I think more.
Well, probably.
But he was very, very nice.
Yes, he was.
So you stayed in touch with Vincent. Were there other people that you stayed in touch with?
Oh yeah. In fact, Dad is still in touch with Jimmy Waples, but I haven't heard anything. I don't know how Jean and Joan are going. I played bridge with their mother.
Recently?
Well, Grandma was still alive.
Okay.
Grandma belonged to a bridge club in Palmyra, which eventually I joined too, and Jean and Joan's mother was part of it. And Helene, her name was Helene
Okay.
Whirlin. And both of the twins left the area. I think they went to Washington, D.C., but they never seemed to come to any of the class reunions where we would have seen all these people. And Dad and I were involved in planning the class reunions while we still had them, so we knew where people was, and we had a list of all of their addresses to send the invitations to.
What was the class size of your graduating class?
Oh, we had a big class. How many was in our class? Would you say 45, 50?
60.
60.
Okay. 60. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you pretty much organized the class reunions every 5 years or every 10 years? Or?
Well, first we did it every year, didn't we, Wells?
I think it was kind of irregular.
Yeah. Well, the Carol Walker, who was a Macedon graduate, and her husband, and Dad and I. Oh well, I forgot Everett, and Frank Lawrence, both part of our groups. Everett's father ran the funeral parlor, and they lived across the street from when we lived on Tyler Street. But anyway, we all got together to plan the reunion.
It was a group thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did Grandma teach you bridge? Is that how you learned bridge? How did you learn bridge?
I think so. I didn't play bridge until we were living on Kendall Street. And I think I started first playing bridge with Natalie, don't you think, Wells?
I remember Natalie.
Natalie Bessie was a good friend of mine in Clifton Springs. She died about 10 years ago, I would say now.
Mm-hmm.
And Dad and I and her husband and Natalie would play bridge together.
Mm-hmm.
I don't quite know how that all started, Marcia.
Mm-hmm.
But have to think
Well,
about
your mother had bridge parties
Right.
when they lived on Canandaigua Street.
Right.
Okay.
And their bridge parties were intense. Well, I mean, my brother and I had to clean the house, help clean the house before bridge parties.
Yeah.
The house had to be sparkling clean,
Yeah.
and they had a special dessert. They had to serve dessert, and it was a big deal. When it was your turn to have bridge club, it was the whole family had to pitch in, and everything had to be sparkling, and my mother would be so nervous, and it wasn't like that for quite a while. It was unusual to me when I first started playing with my mother like that. It was very unusual to me because they were. They kind of had a unwritten rule that they did not discuss any of the unfortunate things that happened to them. And when in that period, my mother and father were having problems and separated, and it was.
Not talked about.
You did not mention it. You were totally not, and I didn't understand that rule.
Did you find out the hard way?
I found out the hard way.
Okay.
I don't know what I inadvertently said, but it was, my mother told me later that we don't talk about that.
Okay.
And we used to go over to Adelaide's cottage. Yeah.
Yeah. What lake was that on?
Seneca Lake. No, Ontario.
Oh, Lake Ontario.
Is
Right.
it in Putneyville?
Yeah. Near
So it'd be
Putneyville.
Ontario.
Holland's Cove, it was
Yeah.
called.
I remember going there.
Yeah,
once.
you went there.
I didn't play bridge, but I've been there.
Yeah. It was a nice little cottage.
Mm-hmm. She was a good friend of Grandma.
Yes, she was.
They traveled.
Hmm?
Didn't they travel a lot together?
Yes. Yes, in fact, I was quite upset about one of the travels. When I was working for Rebecca, when I first started working for Rebecca, Mom asked me to go with her on a trip to Holland to see the tulips. And she had found a really reasonable travel trip, and it sounded wonderful. And I had never been overseas or traveled with my mother, and I was quite excited about it. But the next thing we knew that is Adelaide decided to go. So, and then Maxine decided to go. So it turned into...
A big.
You didn't get to go.
I went.
Oh, you did go.
I did go.
At one of them?
Well, the first one I went with my mother.
Okay.
It was the only trip I went with my mother.
Okay.
So it was the four of you?
Yes, it was the four of us. Yeah. And by then I had quit smoking, but my mother was still smoking. And I think that made it kind of hard because Maxine didn't smoke, but I think Adelaide might have smoked. So it ended up with me sharing the room with Maxine. And there was something wrong with our room. We had a horrible smell. So we had to change rooms. And Maxine was just recovering from bladder surgery. And she really had quite a hard time.
Oh, dear.
She had to, I think she was having major pain during
Oh.
it.
That doesn't make a nice trip.
Well, it was really a very nice trip in the end. I mean, other than the fact that I didn't get to share it completely with my mother.
Yeah.
We saw the tulips were beautiful.
Mm.
The place we stayed at was very interesting. They had a wonderful breakfast that you could take all the food you wanted and make your lunch out of.
Awesome.
Yeah, everybody did that. It was in a small little town, and I don't remember the name. Grandma's got pictures. Oh, well, she did have a lot of pictures of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think Martha has some of them now.
She probably does.
Mm-hmm. Does Martha have most of the pictures from your mother?
Well, they were all in this file cabinet. The file cabinet went to Martha. We have a big steel container of pictures in. I think that's
Martha has that.
Martha has that. We've kind of passed it around.
Is it slide photos?
Yeah,
or-
there are slides.
There's some slides, there are loose photos, and but mostly that box is mostly papers,
Yeah.
documents.
Mm. So you would recommend Holland as a place to go?
I would if it in tulip season.
Yeah.
Yeah. We went to these the enormous tulip auction place
Oh.
because they auction off the bulbs to people that raising tulips is quite financially
Lucrative.
yeah, lucrative. You can make a lot of money out of tulips.
Did you bring some home?
No,
Maybe not possible to do that.
I don't think you're allowed to bring that kind of thing into the country.
Oh, it is yeah.
Right.
Okay.
When we were doing cruises, you weren't allowed to bring any of that kind of thing home with you
Mm-hmm.
because they might have an invasive species connected to them.
That's right. That's right. Did you have fun on the cruises?
Yeah, I think we enjoyed our first cruises more than. I mean, we got kind of cruise burned out by the time we went on our last ones, don't you think?
The novelty had worn off.
Yes, the novelty had worn off.
You have, it's an experience.
Yes.
It's nice to have uniformed flunkies at your beck and call, but wouldn't want that as a steady diet.
Right.
And those are with Grandma Frida, right?
Oh, no, we went
No?
on several by ourselves.
Oh, okay.
We had one, I think we had probably the best cruise we had was when we got really upgraded to the luxurious, wasn't exactly the penthouse, but it was a luxurious one, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did you get upgraded?
Well, we didn't really know why we got upgraded.
They ran out of the rooms that we had requested and had to put us someplace else, and that was the thing that was available, so we lucked out.
Yeah.
We got up to the window where you check in, and they sent us over to the good part.
Nice. Where was that a cruise to?
Oh, probably the Caribbean. I think was mostly where we went to. But there was a lot of nice things about it. Breakfast, they could have them deliver breakfast to you, and the food was good. And one of the things we enjoyed most was a music trio that on one cruise we went to. Every night after supper we would go there and have a Galliano or a Drambuie and listen to their music. It was really nice.
What kind of music was that?
There was a piano, and what else? There was 3.
Yeah, there were more than one group where
Right.
we did that. One was a string quartet,
Mm.
but another one was a trio. It was
Yeah.
a piano, a violin, and
That's the one I
Something
can't
else.
think of.
Piano.
It keeps having a red line that says capture on it, Dad. What does that mean? See that? Capture. Is that good or bad?
I don't remember. I
Okay.
think it has something to do with the sound.
Yeah, because it usually came on when you were talking off.
Camera.
See, it's happening now while we're talking. But as soon as we stop talking and it's just Marcia and Mom, it seems to not be there. I was just worried we weren't getting everything that's going on.
Well, I can go and find the manual.
That's okay.
Well, I mean, it might be worth making sure that the full.
Well, it says right on there that it's recording.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we could pause it, and you can go look at the manual, and we got all afternoon, or we got plenty of time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to pause it and check the manual.
Sure.
Pausing.
Okay.